Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Inside the OC. My name is Matt Canizaro. Another thrilling episode coming up for you today. We've got a terrific guest, and this man does just about everything there is to do in the sport of bowling. And we're going to go way back. We're going to tell you the journey of Brent Bowers. But before we get started with our guest, let's bring in my co-host for today, Mr. Aaron Smith. Welcome.
Hello, Matthew. How are you doing today?
Welcome back. How are things at the IBC?
Things are going well. I got Chris and Bo behind me here, so I'm ready for another great edition of Inside the OC. You know, when we were kind of preparing for this, you were preparing for it, you were doing all the heavy lifting. Brent has been out in front of bowling for so long, this feels more like an episode of This Is Your Life versus a podcast. But it's very cool. We got a lot of great stuff to chat with Brent about. So I'm ready. Let's get this thing started.
All right. Well, when I was chatting with him to get ready for the show, he's only in his early 30s now, so still a long way to go in his career with the sport of bowling. And he said that he really didn't feel like he accomplished that much. And I already knew quite a bit. And then I started doing some research. I was like, this is a very modest young man. He's going places in our sport. And you're absolutely right. Let's bring him on. Let's talk. Let's catch up. And you guys spent some time together last year, so we can reminisce a little bit about the good old days of 2019 as well.
Absolutely. And with that, Brent Bowers, welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Hey, we really appreciate it. Again, we're gonna tell the tale of Brent Bowers and the amazing place that you come from, and the history and tradition, and even got some of it right behind you there in the office. So we're not going to waste a whole lot of time today. We're going to get to it. Eventually, we're going to talk about the Open Championships, of course. The show is called Inside the OC, and you are an Eagle winner, no doubt a very special part of your bowling career. But before we get there, we're going to take it way back. We're going to catch up with what things have been like for you in 2020, and then we're going to go back to the early days of Brent Bowers on the lanes. Chuck All-Star tomorrow, collegiate national champion, junior team USA. Quite a list of accomplishments for you. But first, let's catch up. You got to spend some time with Aaron Smith in 2019 at the USBC Women's Championships and USBC Queens. You are the general manager there at Northrock Lanes in Wichita, Kansas. It's been a crazy year for all of us in general, and especially in the bowling industry. Tell us about what 2020 has been like for not only Brent Bowers, but for the Wichita bowling community as well.
Well, obviously, 2020 is a very strange year for everybody, and everybody's dealing with it in different ways. It feels like just yesterday we were in February, and in our world we were running a very successful tournament, the Southwest Bowling Association event, which was in their 15th year with us, and then it was just like the world stopped. And we feel so fortunate, so blessed here in Wichita. Our numbers as far as COVID goes are significantly lower than a lot of other populations. And so, we reopened back on Memorial Day. We've been open since with some limited capacity, which has slowly loosened up over time. And we did run some summer leagues. Our numbers were down a bit throughout summer, but we worked really, really hard to try to get our league bowlers back this fall. A number of new bowlers that, feel like things are safe enough to get out and about and do things. So we're nearly flat. We feel so lucky here at Northrock. It's a beautiful center. You mentioned earlier, I've been the GM here for a few years, but since I was a kid, this has been my favorite bowling center. And so it's such a gift to be able to now, it's a gift and it can be scary because I've had this conversation with my boss a number of times. I don't want to be the guy that ruins this place as somebody who holds it in such high regards and cares about it so much. We've got a great team, great group of people, our league coordinator, our youth director, other people that have been with us for many, many years. I think that consistency helps us. When tournaments come back, a lot of these folks remember how this stuff works. And when our league bowlers come back year after year, it's the same relationships we've already formed. So, in the Wichita bowling community, for the most part, it seems like things are somewhat normal. And we've said this a number of times, if I have to wear this mask for the rest of my life to keep life feeling the way it feels right now, I'd be perfectly happy doing that forever. So things are good, certainly better than some, worse than others, but we feel very, very lucky to have our business up and operational right now.
Brent, with the things that you post on social media and all the things that you do at your center, the great events that you have, the future for youth bowling, if there was a person or a way that epitomizes what a future for the sport means, certainly your name would be on that list. Just following you and all your efforts, certainly we appreciate that. And again, a lot of that, as you described, has to do with your upbringing, where you came from, and the amazing bowling community in Wichita and the surrounding area. And all of those things helped you, again, become who you are and make you want the next generation to experience the things that you did. And while we can do all the research in the world, find all the info, dig up all the baby pictures of little Brent running around in a diaper, certainly there's no better resource than somebody potentially who has walked those streets, lived those moments, knows the people you know. So we do have a very special guest for today's show who's going to come in and share some of the information, ask you some great questions that only somebody who's connected in the area and has lived it can know. We would like to bring in the executive director of USBC, Mr. Chad Murphy.
Hey, buddy. How are you?
Good, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. When we started talking about this, I want to thank Matt and Aaron for allowing me to join the podcast today. My first trip into the OC podcast. Have been enjoying listening to it for quite a while, and I want to start there. But when started to learn about how we were going to talk about your journey, I thought, man, I'd like to be a part of that part of the podcast, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
A lot of folks, we talk about Wichita when we talk about Brent Bowers, but I know you as actually from a small town not too far from there, which was kind of the beginning of your journey. And so I would like for you to, just kind of start off by talking about that small town and what it meant to you.
Well, there's no question. What you said, I mean, I live and breathe and love bowling. And it started in Hutchinson, Kansas at a place called Countryside Lanes, a 40-lane center there on 30th Street. And so many stars have aligned for me. The people I've met, the places I've been, at the times I've been there. I'm not the greatest bowler of all time, or even the greatest bowler to come from the dirt of this great state of Kansas. But I do feel like I've had a very blessed career, very good career, and I hope it's not over. But all these people that have been in my path that have allowed this to happen, I feel a great debt to the sport of bowling. Everything in my life has almost come from bowling. My family, my friends, all through the sport of bowling. Most of the people that were at my wedding, most people that stood up there at my wedding, all from bowling. And so, but that all starts in a small town of about 50,000, Hutchinson, Kansas. I started bowling at the age of 3. My mom was the youth director there at Countryside. My dad was the local bowling association manager. And my brother bowled. My brother was 9 years older than me, and I can still envision his beautiful blue hammer, going and ripping the racks there at Countryside. And that's what evolved my passion and love for it. And so, and obviously that's a very special bowling center for you as well, Chad. I reference that place now as the house that Lowell built. And you and your brother and Lonnie and Brian and Rich Renolette and Darren Needham and all these people that are now in my life that have a connection and have spent time there in Hutch at Countryside. So it was a great place. It was a great place to be a kid. It was a great place to grow up. And I'm so thankful that's where it all started.
Thanks for going there. I don't know if you can see it behind me, but there's a picture of that bowling center on the wall, the horizontal one of Countryside Lane. So I appreciate you going there and talking about your mom and dad. And I'm going to get to that a little bit, but start off, you and I were both younger brothers of someone that had a pretty significant impact in our lives growing up and bowling being a part of that. My brother Billy, who you know well, but also your brother Brian. Talk a little bit about how you got going there and the impact Brian had on you and why you wanted to bowl.
9 years older than I was, and I wanted to be just like him. Everything he did, I wanted to do it, and I'm sure it drove him nuts. There's not many 12, 13-year-old kids that want their 3, 4-year-old little brother tagging along, and so against his will, oftentimes I would always be there watching him bowl and observing him going to tournaments, watching bowling tournaments, and as it sometimes happens, I worked really, really hard. I was also very fortunate to meet up with a great coach who's pictured here behind me. Mark Lewis comes to Hutchinson when I'm 9 years old, and I worked with him privately. My parents paid for my weekly lesson with him until I went on to Wichita State at 18. But Brian left when I was 9 and came to Wichita and tried out for Wichita State's bowling team. And I can still remember it was such a big deal for a kid from Hutchinson that they did a front page article in the Hutchinson News sports section. And we still have that framed at home of Brian there holding his bowling ball ready to go hit the big leagues. And it was aspirational. I when Brian moved away, I moved into Brian's bedroom. I kept a lot of it the same. And we talk about Chuck Hall, the Chuck Hall Award. There was a picture of a guy by the name of, oh boy, this is bad that I've forgotten this. His first name was John, and he was destined to be one of Wichita's up and coming stars. And he had won the Chuck All-Star Tomorrow. And that article from the paper of him, that was right there, right next to another article of the score sheet for the Mike Albee, David Ozio final in 1993 here at Northrock. And so, I lived in that room and I aspired to be, as good as my brother. Come to find out who I thought he was as a bowler, he would go back and tell that it wasn't quite all true. I think he told me that he set the record for like the lowest, score at Wichita State's tryouts that freshman year. I didn't know all that. I knew that he came here. He was working in this big, beautiful bowling center that I was in love with here at Northrock, and he was bowling for a collegiate, but the greatest collegiate bowling team. He was trying out for the greatest collegiate bowling team of all time. And there's no question there were some seeds planted there, and some of those seeds have sprouted and come to fruition now. And there's no question I wouldn't be where I'm at without Brian Bowers being a part of that journey.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Tell Brian when you see him on this, our Facebook conversations. We always went back and forth between private messenger. Moving into that a little bit, and again, Brian was a product of it. You talked about Mark Lewis and your relationship there. One of the things that I always like to share with folks is how big, parents can be, but also when they get involved, right? When I was bowling in that local market, Pat Lewis was a name. She was a youth director over at Boulevard Lanes. And of course, that's Pat's mom, or excuse me, Mark's mother. Your mother was a big piece of you growing up. And just to start this section, I want to tell a quick story, and I want to share a video of you talking about your mother. Your mom was the lady, your dad too, but they were always around countryside, right? They just forever, for years. And you could never walk in there and have a conversation with your mom or dad, or even walk into them and they wouldn't have a good smile on their face. Right when you walked up, you just knew that they were happy to be there. But if it's okay, Matt, this would be clip number 2, which is Brent talking about his mom in his Chuck All-Star Tomorrow speech.
Thank you to my mom. I know deep down, even though I've questioned you in the past, that you are my number one fan. And I know you were the youth director at our center for 13 years, and it was such a challenge for you to never show favoritism to your youngest son. And I sure didn't feel any. But I know as I got older and I started to travel all over the country with a bowling bag, oftentimes it was alone, and I know that's not the way you would have wanted it. And there's never been a victory on the lanes and off that you haven't shared with me, and I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart.
I like to tell everyone, buddy, that youth sports are run by people, and they're usually somebody's parents. And then your mom was a big piece of that. So if you don't mind, share the folks, you go on to win these Eagles, right? This Eagle at this Open Championships, and you see the guys behind you, and we're going to talk about them in a few minutes. But share with some folks just a perspective about your mom. And I know a little bit of that was funny, but there was some emotion there too.
Yeah. Becky Bowers took over part-time working at Countryside Lanes as youth director while managing a full-time 9-to-5 job at Farmland She was in customer service at the Farmland Corporation there in Hutchinson. Did that for 20 plus years. And it wasn't uncommon, she would come home from work at 5, she would change clothes, and she was out the door by 5:15 or 5:30, headed to the bowl. And if you walked into Countryside, the tabletops up top were these tall rounds with these red bar stools. And she would plant herself right there, somewhere between the front door and the front desk. And she'd have her binder of stuff, and she'd be working on youth bowling. And she was like she was like the Walmart greeting person, for Countryside Lanes. And she didn't do it for the money, I can promise you that. But there wasn't a kid that walked in Countryside Lanes that she didn't get down on their level and talk to them. Very rarely talk to the parent. That conversation happened later. But she impacted a lot of people. And so to this day, a lot of these kids are roaming around, and we see each other, and they talk about how much fun Mom's youth program was. And there's something about being a mother that some of the greatest youth programs we've seen built by mothers and people with that capacity to love children the way only a mother can. And it was very important to her to not let anybody think that she was favoring Brent Bowers, because I was getting good thanks to Mark Lewis and the coaching and the camps that I was getting at Wichita State. But I know it was hard for her, because sometimes she wanted to, and she would go the other direction, and I sometimes would beg for her attention. But it all makes sense now, 20 years later. But yeah, she ran that program for Brian and I, and much like my youth director here at Northrock now, who has gotten involved for very similar reasons. A son who just recently bowled his first ever 300 last week. She took this job. She left a good paying job to come to this job for her boy. And she's doing a magnificent job with our program. And it's really amazing how her story with Brady, Kristen's story with Brady, is so similar to my mom's story with me.
It's
been very neat to watch.
And I know there were a lot of other folks that were so important to your journey too. And I won't name them all, but folks like Melinda Collins and Sandy Butcher, and that community, that state was so into building great people. But just talk a little bit about the entire community, because even though we're from Hutchinson and Countryside Lanes, it's bigger than that, right? You're going all over the state, bowling in all these other great programs and great tournaments. So speak to that a little bit if you can.
Yeah, you mentioned Belinda. Belinda worked part-time occasionally at our bowling center, and was a dear friend of my mom's. They had a group of ladies that would hang out, and they'd go play cards at each other's houses, and they would enjoy their time at Countryside. But it wasn't uncommon. Belinda would work on Friday or Saturday night, and I'd be there bowling all the way till 2, 3 in the morning, help her clean up the place, and she'd drive me home, at 3 o'clock in the morning after we'd closed up Countryside. And it wasn't uncommon. I kind of came with the building at that time. Different managers would come in, and just kind of became expected that, hey, we take home this kid after we're all done. But he does a good job of cleaning the tables and helping you pick up the house balls, things like that. But yeah, you mentioned Sandy Butcher, who we just lost a few weeks ago. Our state youth director for a lot of years, firm but fair. Everybody respected her, everybody loved her, and she was a great character. She was a great role model. She played things by the book, and she played by the rules, but at the same time recognized greatness, recognized when kids did great things. And again, Kansas is just so special for a state of 2.5 to 3 million. With only a couple of metro areas, Wichita, about 500,000 people in our metro area. There's just a special thing here in our bowling community, and I tie it all the way back. I think the butterfly effect of Gordon Vatican and those folks starting a great program at Wichita State, and the people that they built and recruited, the Jazz Nows and the different folks like that. It all kind of layered, and it made Wichita really, really special. And that overflows to places like Hutchinson.
Yeah, and I'm going to move there next. So hang in there with me. But I've been lucky in traveling the world, and anywhere you go, folks always say, "Hey, where I grew up is the best," right? And we could put bowlers from one area of the country against another group versus another group. And I am going to get to the Wichita State effect here in a minute. But before we skip out on that early journey, I'd be remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity to talk about your dad. I got another clip. So Maddie, if you'll pull up clip number 3, which is Brent talking about his dad, and then Brent will talk about it on the other side.
To my father, who's no longer here, that man devoted his life to my bowling, and we had some great trips together. We had some wonderful McDonald's breakfasts on Saturday mornings at Countryside Lanes. I won many coins off of him, getting strikes and spares as a bantam bowler. And he was always there for me. And Mom, you know this, you too were always willing to sacrifice for my gain. And I am forever grateful.
Got to take you back a little bit. You know, I considered your parents good friends of mine. I had a lot of respect for them. I know both of them, you got to be proud of you today. But if you want to share anything about your dad, I'll give you a second to do that.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things a lot of people go through. I lost my father a little earlier in life than a lot of folks do. Hard to believe it's been 15 years this month since he passed away. I was a senior in high school, and I had a couple of years there where I absolutely could have fallen off the rails, and had some very special people in my life, you know, keep putting me back together and holding me together. But, you know, growing up, he was 50 when I was born. Which is rather unusual. It wasn't uncommon for people to assume he was my grandpa. But I loved him. I knew nothing else. He was my dad, and this is how father-son relationships were supposed to look. And he was also disabled, but you wouldn't know it by talking to him. He never acted it, or he never, leveraged it. He used to, there's a whole bunch of stuff there, but he was the local bowling association manager. He bowled on Friday nights, was the secretary of their league that mom and dad bowled with Jackie and Gil on Friday nights. And he even had a lift on his shoe, like an 1.5 inch lift, because of all of his health problems. It's just funny, but through a teal rhino, of which we still have. And he loved bowling, and he loved watching Brian and I bowl. And, he took me to Junior Gold when it was there in Dallas. I think that would have been maybe 2003. Driving a Grand Am that was overheating the whole way down there, and we couldn't afford that trip, and they always found a way. It didn't matter what credit card we had to max out. They took a huge gamble on me, and so far it's worked out. So he lives with me every day. The older I get, the more and more I start to look like him, and I look at my hands, and I can remember his hands, and they just so many things, and people are starting to say the same thing that knew him are starting to tell me how much I look like him. And I take great pride in that. My middle name is his first name, Alwyn. And I used to hate that name. I just hated it. And I've grown to love it. And I'm so glad that he gave me his name, even though it was rather unusual to explain to kids when I was younger. But I certainly wouldn't be where I'm at without him and his influence for 17 years.
Isn't it amazing that the things that you remember? The Junior Gold trip with the overheating Grand Am, that's a great story. So let's move a little bit, right? So you grew up in Countryside Lanes, Hutchinson, Kansas. You're going to go to school to be a bowler. You've now, we went from, hey, I knew you when and where, to now you're hitting the big time, right? Number one, a collegiate bowling program in the country. You've got Mark Lewis as your coach. You're moving into having conversations with folks like Gordon Vatican. Chuck Hallstar tomorrow is part of that. And I just want to share a perspective about that. But talk about your move in at Wichita State and your relationship with Gordon.
Well, to make it as quick as I can, because it can be a long one if I wanted it to be. Ray Beatty, who works for Joma here, he came and managed my bowling center when I was 9. In that process, Mark Lewis had just come back from the United Arab Emirates as their coach and was looking for a job. And he started out as the manager of Countryside Lanes for a brief period of time, traveling to and from Wichita to manage the center. I didn't realize at the time, but that's absolutely a star that aligned for me. And my mom immediately started me taking lessons with Mark, $25 a lesson. I can still remember she'd always pre-write the check, and he'd always make fun of her chicken scratch. And he even used to come and pick me up in my driveway after school on his way into the bowling center. We'd go have a 1 hour lesson, and then he'd start working from 5 o'clock to close. And then eventually, I think I was probably 11 or so, he took on the full-time role as assistant coach to Gordon. And they even let me into the Shocker Bowling Camp a year earlier than the legal age that they had on the documents. But I went to Shocker Bowling Camp about 7 or 8 times one time every summer. And then when I'm 18, I went and I tried out. They didn't have pre-selections. There was no guarantees. But I was bleeding black and gold for a long time by that point. And was a rookie the same year John Zerbinski came in from Buffalo, from North Tonawanda. And it was a great year. We were a fantastic team that first year. I thought I was good, but I wasn't that good. Those guys that I was bowling with, George Lambert, Steve Elson, Jesse Buss, Chris Drews, Osama Calfan, a lot of really good bowlers. And we were number 1 ranked in the nation, and we lose at nationals to UC Davis, back-to-back pops. And the whole program changed from there. It was really interesting. I feel like I got Gordon Vatican in his prime when it came to coaching. He was really, really sharp, and he knew exactly. We stood on the concourse at the national tournament after that freshman loss, and he knew exactly what our road looked like the next year. And then we went on a 3-year run of winning 3 consecutive national championships. I took a year off. My 3rd year at Wichita State, I was broke. I was working here at Northrock. I was working at a local corporate catering company, and I had started coaching to try to make ends meet. My mom was obviously on her own, had lost any income my dad had. She was working at Dillon's as a checkout person on top of working at the bank all day once we had moved to Mulvane. And so I honestly, my grades weren't great. There was just a lot of things that weren't right in my life. And so I took a year off. They won without me being there. I called Coach V and said, "You clearly didn't need me like you thought you did." And he was convinced I wasn't going to come back. I told him I was going to come back, and I did come back the next year. And that was when we brought in Ronnie Sparks as well, and we won the 3rd one in a row in El Paso. And it was just magic. I mean, if I could go back to any spot in my life, my time bowling on that team has been the most enjoyable time of my life. And the people and the friendships. I look at that photo you've got right there. I mean, Kevin Tatro was in my wedding. John Zerbinski and I lived on John's floor in the dorm for about a month and a half until he kicked me out because I was driving him crazy freshman year. Jake Peters, who also married a Shocker, Melissa Hurst, they live in Las Vegas. Just a lot of special people there. Every single person in that picture is a dear, dear friend of mine. And that's what bowling does to us. Bowling has a lot of special people in it. It bonds us and it brings us together. And it was a lot of fun, that three-peat run.
Yeah, you are. We always talk about the body of work that, happens. You're a product of bowling, right? You think about YABA youth bowling, which is IBC youth now, and then moving into collegiately, and then you moved on. And we always celebrate some of those guys in that picture because they become PBA champions. And so those are but there's this other group, right, that does the same thing. You went 40 miles from your home to college, and then now you're working at a center in that same community as the GM. You're a success of the platform too. 2 steps within that, Chuck Hall, and certainly winning OC Eagle as part of that. But before we move on from the collegiate piece, I know you and Gordon have a very unique relationship, and it's one of utmost respect. What you said there, I think, is important, and you can hit on it here in just a second. But I'll bet you there aren't too many folks that didn't pass through that program that wouldn't say they got Gordon Vatican at his best. And so I appreciate you saying that a great deal because I think it's probably a lot of folks feel the same way. But you also have a relationship with him that is more of a friendship. And so if you don't mind, I got one more clip from your Chuck Hall speech.
Sorry, Gordon.
We'll segue to that. Matt, it's clip number 1.
I thought about this long and hard for a long time. And I continued to talk to my friends about how to deal with this anxiety of speaking in front of all of you today. They all gave me the same typical advice that I should picture you all naked. So that was my plan. until I was driving over here this morning and I realized that my collegiate bowling coach and USBC Hall of Famer Gordon Vatican would be in the audience. And that's just not something I think I can recover from.
I'm running these clips, obviously, Brent, because when we do these shows, you know, there's lots of ways to find the personality. But I was really proud of you that day. I was in the audience, sitting in the back with Frank DeSocio. And it just, everybody experiences those differently. But I just think you did a wonderful job with that speech. You really did.
Chad, if I can, that
Sure.
is the only piece of that speech that was predetermined, that I had thought about. I remember sitting in the audience. I didn't have a speech. I was sitting there next to my mom writing some notes on a napkin, and she looked at me and said, "You haven't written a speech?" And I said, "No." And my mom, if you know my mom, she is not me. I am cut from my father's cloth. We are procrastinators. We do a lot of things. We fly by the seat of our pants. But that piece I had thought about, and I remember the only person I had told that to prior to going down to Dallas. I was standing in your brother's pro shop right on the other side of this wall. And I had told Billy I had prepared for Coach V. And that's the only piece. And then I knew the rest of that speech was just going to be a thank you note to everybody who had made a difference in my life. And it happened to turned out okay that day. So
it was awesome. 8 minutes of just absolutely love and respect. I really appreciated the way you went about that. I want to talk about the Chuck Hall piece a little bit. And I got to get out of here because I told these guys I wouldn't take up the whole show. But I really have two more pieces to hit, and then I'll move on. A lot of folks wouldn't know it, but Kansas is actually a little bit of a hub for the Chuck Hall Star Tomorrow. 1985, Justin Romick. 1989, Lonnie Wallachek. 1995, John Miller, who you talked about a little bit earlier, you in 11. And then Derek Holmes in 14. I could get all the way down to the high schools. That those guys went to. But when you think about that, it's pretty amazing. But then I want to bring in another group, and that's the group that comes into Wichita State, and then we'll try to tie the community and how it works. But Chris Whitty, Danny Nadeau, Patrick Healy, Brad Jonitz, I think Sean Rash and Nathan Bohr. So there were 11 Chuck Halls that landed into that community. And I don't necessarily wanting to get in why or how, because obviously it's the people that you talked about earlier that you surround yourself with. But when you think about that kind of firepower into a certain realm, and then the Eagles that come from it as well, which I'm going to get into next. But just talk about what it means to you, winning that award and having your name synonymous with those.
I can remember getting a phone call from the IBC youth group. And I was actually at home sick that day. I got a call, and I was laying on the couch in Mom's living room, and I couldn't believe it. I applied just because it's what you were supposed to do, but I really did not think at that point in time I would be qualified for it. I would argue that maybe there was a weak class of people that attempted that year. But, there's so many things. I mean, without Junior Team USA, without the gold medals in El Salvador at the PABCON event, an event that I wasn't supposed to bowl in. And I tell the story here. I mean, Chuck Hall, the way the stars aligned for that, I'm working here at Northrock in 2008, and Ricky Ellison, who had just made Junior Team USA, now at the time was Ricky Williams, was practicing with her family, and on her way out, she said, "We'll see you in Detroit at Junior Gold." And I said, "Rick, I can't afford it. I'm not going." And she said, "No, Bowers, you have to go. We have to get you there." And she talked about calling Days Inn and trying to get a sponsor for my hotel. And then that day I decided I was going to go. I'd already qualified, but I couldn't afford it. And that day I decided I was going to go. It was a month away. And once it became known that I was trying to go, another dear family here in town, Per and Tom Tatro, the parents of a dear friend of mine, Kevin Tatro, set me down on the concourse here and said, "Brent, we know you want to go. You've been nothing but nice and good to Kevin since we came from Hawaii, and we'd like to pay for your hotel." And they paid for my hotel to go to Detroit and bowl the Junior Gold tournament. And so I get my 1994 Camry stuffed with every bowling ball I own and every clothing I can, and I go and I go, and that's a longer story. Will Clark is I stop in Chicago with Will Clark to get some coaching. I end up making Junior Team USA. I get selected. It was the best performance of my youth career. And then a month after that, they changed a bunch of age rules. I'm not supposed to be on the '08 team, only the '09 team. They dragged me onto the '08 team because a bunch of kids aren't age eligible now. Andrew Koff declines to go to the PABCON because of schoolwork, which I think that decision has served him well. His folks knew what they were doing when they raised Anna and Andrew. But because of Andrew's schoolwork, I then was able to go to San Salvador, El Salvador with Danny Spink, Jeffrey Young, and John Zerbinski. And we swept the gold medals. It was the best performance the youth team had ever had at a PABCON event. And I wasn't even supposed to be there. And so without Ricky Ellison starting that chain reaction and getting me to go to junior gold and making that team and then winning the gold medals at PABCON, there's no question that I'm not on that podium for the Chuck All-Star of Tomorrow speech of where I learned about a job with the state bowling proprietors that was going to keep me in the bowling business. And it was a business I'd always wanted to be in. And it just started this massive chain reaction. And I sat on the concourse at the Radigan Student Center at the bowling center there at Wichita State next to John Zerbinski my sophomore year. And I can still vividly remember telling him, said, John, I don't care if I make $20,000 a year or $200,000 a year for the rest of my life. I'm going to live in bowling, everything and anything. I just feel this tremendous debt to give it back. Bowling's given me so much, and I want the same opportunities to be available for the next generation of Brent Bowers or Georgia Wiggins or Ricky Williams or whoever it may be. And so there's no place I'd rather be. I love everything about my life right now.
Yeah, I think so many of us feel that way for sure, but I love the way that you just presented that. I want to talk about the guys behind you a little bit, and then I'm going to segue it back to Matt and Aaron and the OC part of this, right? So your entire journey all the way through this process, you've had all of this help. Why so much success from a group of bowlers from Kansas, and you represent that as I do, but you at a larger level, I really believe that because competitively you've just done more. But those guys behind you and another group of people amazingly represent over 40 Eagles at the Open Championships. I'm just going to run off some of the names. There's a question coming, so hang in there. But Chafee, Trell, Mark Henson, Barnes, Vatican, Chappelle, Lewis, Klompkin, Wallachek, Vatican, of course, Ronnie Sparks, Matt McNeil. These are all names that came in and out of Wichita that hold Eagles. And I tell people, they say, well, how did you get involved in the Open Championships? And I always point to those guys behind you, right? Because I don't know that I would have known anything about the Open Championships if it wasn't for, Paul Wallachek and Mark Jensen and Gordon Vatican and Mark Lewis. And I kind of think of it, in terms of the community itself, right? But you have all of these Eagles that have been won within this TJ Mento comes in there and wins one. Explain it like I'm not being able to explain it like I'd like to, Brent. But I think it kind of goes back to those guys in that Chilton vending team with billiards team. But I don't know. What do you think?
They're the founders. The Chilton team for me were the founders of competitive bowling in the Wichita market. And from them spawned a lot of great things for the future generations. I was a student of that tournament. It all started for me with Coach Mark Lewis. I knew that I knew he'd been a part of this, and when I moved to the community, I got to know guys like Mark Jensen, and as you mentioned, my relationship with Gordon Vatican has certainly changed into more of a friendship. It's a great relationship we have now. Having lunch next week, Bob Chappelle is another one that I just randomly get to know, and I'm addicted to the history. I want to know everything there is to know about bowling and Wichita bowling, and so getting to know these guys, getting to know guys like Bill Lillard and I want to chase the total pinfall record, right? Because of Bill Lillard and guys like Joe Norris. But that all started with Mark and Gordon and Paul Wallachek and Bob and other guys like Rick Steelsmith that have been, I think Pat Healy might've been the sixth man for the team behind me. I wish so badly I would have been of age to have gone back and watched that. I wish we had better video footage so I could go back and watch stuff like that. But I consider them the founders of competitive bowling in this market.
Yeah, it's an amazing ride, but I want to get out of here. I appreciate you taking it easy on me, allowing me to come in and be a part of this podcast. Like I said earlier, I think the thing that I knew you would do is make it about everybody else, because that's how you're wired, right? But I'm really proud of you, buddy. You think about all you're accomplishing, all you're doing. The thing that I'm the most proud of is you went from this competitive bowler that, wanted to be a pro, and now you're a bowling builder, right? You promote it in your bowling market there. You do everything you can because you want more people to experience it. So I'm going to pass it back over to Matt and Aaron, but I want to say to you before I go how proud I am of you. And I'll let them engage the actual OC piece of it. But thanks being part of the club. Some people call it the Wichita Mafia. And you think about all of these people that I just talked about that are members of it. I'm proud to be a member of it. And thanks you too. We got handshakes and it's a club and membership and jackets and everything, right? So anyway, have fun.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. That was some really awesome stuff there, Brent. Again, would have been hard for us to tell the stories in such a way and know the names and feel the emotion that certainly was stirred there. So we appreciate that opportunity and some great insight for us and things that we knew to ask about, but maybe not in such a way. So that is great. And now we're going to transition, of course, a little bit to the OC part of this Inside the OC podcast. The background, that's the foundation for who you are as a player. You mentioned all the great names, all the guys who influenced you along the way. So awesome that you appreciate the history of the sport and the event, and, of course, Wichita bowling the way that you do. And then you mentioned also leaving college for a year because, just things needed to change a little bit financially and just the path for you was different, per se, than others maybe who come through the Wichita program. So let's talk about that. As you transition out of college, going on to the next step. Of course, so much talent from there. It goes on to the professional ranks and chases that dream. You are chasing a different dream, taking a different path. Tell us about that. And I mean, that's a big decision in a way, especially being as talented as you are as a player, coming out of college to serve the sport in a different way. Tell us about that.
I appreciate the compliments. I look back on it. I always thought I was a better bowler than I ever really was. When you show up to Wichita State and you're bowling with a guy like John Zerbinski, John had something about him that I did not have, and I recognized it early. And I wasn't willing to put in the work at that point to get where he was. I've been fortunate to be around some great people. Chris Prather and I partnered up as doubles partners, and we knew Chris was going to be special. He had a gift the moment he showed up in Wichita. I happened to convince him to be my partner before anybody else did. That's all it really was. We take third in doubles in El Paso. One of the only times I have ever beaten him in a team setting. Typically, I'm somewhere in the back riding him like a horse. But and then you look at what happened in 2016. Such an interesting story. I mean, that team, Zach Rhodes really wasn't supposed to be there. Zach wasn't going to be able to go. I told him I would fund his trip and back him. And we knew Zach is either on or off. He's not, it always seemed like when everybody else was lined up, Zach had some struggle. And if Zach was lined up, the rest of us always had some issues. He does some pretty unique things that make him a special bowler. But, that year it was like frame 3. He had like 48 in the third of game 1. And he's like, I got to get out of here. I got to move left. I got to, we're like, no, don't move left. And finally we just said, forget it. Just go do whatever you got to do. And he jumped left and went on a tear, and it convinced that Prather and Hoope that they could jump a little bit. So they kind of got halfway to where Zach was, and we left Zwashka and myself as far right as we could. And I think it allowed us to blend that pair of lanes out really well. But again, Zach wasn't even supposed to be there, and he shoots 750, and he gives us all a gift, which is really what I feel. I mean, don't get me wrong. I didn't shoot 490, but a couple of us in there with 630s, and a couple of us in there with 7.0s, and then Zach in there with the 750. It was so special, so much fun. I wish I could do it again every single year, and our paths have taken us different directions, and obviously with some of the rule changes, which I completely understand. But you control the controllables. You change what you can change, and you don't worry about the rest. And so I've even migrated my own self. My goal now is to take as many people to that tournament as I can, because that tournament, much like bowling, has given me so much. that I want other people to experience, and I want that event to continue to be successful and hopefully grow if we can get us out of this COVID experiment. This is difficult times, but yeah, I don't know if I answered your question there. I think I might have ran on a tangent, but.
Well, that's what we do here on the Inside the OC. We just like talking bowling and history. And the night that you mentioned, 2016, the regular team event, of course, you guys went on to win the team title. It was a wacky night for all of us. We obviously saw something very special in that team. A couple of the players you mentioned, Mitch Hoope, Chris Prather, have gone on to find a big stage as well, internationally and on the PBA tour. But you guys came in, the camaraderie, the friendship, the things that Wichita State breeds, and you were on the live stream schedule for that night. I believe that was the time when all the internet in Nevada went out for however many hours, and so everybody's waiting. They're waiting, and then you guys come out with 1,004 game number 1. So nobody's too upset at that point. Like, they didn't miss a whole lot. And then the things started happening, and the scores that followed. You guys nearly got to 3,400 after 1,004 start. Things that you really can't teach. Again, you made a big move there. You trusted the instincts. You trusted each other, the communication, and then you were able to realize eventually, it was still a month later, winning an Open Championships Eagle, something that you clearly have had some emotion about, knowing what it meant to the community, knowing what Gordon and those guys did in the late 1980s. To be in that position, tell us about that night, taking the lead in the way that you did, and then having a chance to win an Eagle at the OC.
Obviously Mark Lewis has had a very profound impact on me in the way I view bowling, in the way I view life. And he always said, I don't know why, we bowled a number of events together, 3 or 4 or 5 events we bowled, and it was always very special for me to get to watch him walk out on the lanes and get introduced as an Eagle champion, Eagle winner. And but he did always mention, the goal was always to kind of shoot like 1,000 number, then like an 1,100 number, then like a 1,200 number. If you set them up the right way, they should get easier and allow you to go gangbusters as the day goes on. And it's really interesting because it's almost exactly what happened for us: 1,000, 1,100, 1,200. And that night, like I said, 19 and 20 at the National Bowling Stadium, a bowling center that I historically have not bowled well at. But we have that really weird first game. The first 3 or so frames wasn't really pretty. Zach was confused, not really sure what he was doing. And so he jumps left because he's kind of in panic mode. And we say, Zach, just go do whatever you want to do. We all had to plan to stay right. And we did. And then I assume we're looking at game 3 probably here, right? Yeah, sure. Right at the end where they had opened up quite a bit. But Zach led all that. And again, a kid that wasn't even supposed to be there. I mean, we wasn't going to be able to make it. And we drove out there, and we drove all the way there to Reno and back that trip. And so it was a really, really special night. And again, I'm appreciative of people thinking that I'm a great bowler. It's hard when you grow up in Wichita and you go to Wichita State and you get to bowl alongside guys like Chris Prather and John Zerbinski, Ronnie Sparks, Josh Blanchard, Jake Peters, guys who have gone on to do some really amazing things in our sport. It makes me look average at best, and I feel that way, and I'm totally okay with it. A lot of folks don't know this. My father had a disability. My brother and I both have this ankylosing spondylitis, early onset rheumatoid arthritis thing. I learned it in 2008 when I majored in Team USA. I knew that long term my body wasn't going to treat me well, and it didn't make sense to put a lot of eggs in the competitive basket, And so since then, kind of my idol's been Mark Jensen. Mark has bowled every year for the last 60 years or so, and he plays a pretty narrow and straight game, and he doesn't put a whole lot on it. And I've kind of done the same thing in hopes that I can bowl late in life in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, this night, it was special. We have a companion team there. My wife at the time we're not, but my wife, Derek Lewis, Colton, Leela, and Ashley, we were lucky to have them working with us to not destroy the pair, to do the right things. This was without a doubt our best year and we were the most prepared. We'd done some practice sessions prior to that year. Thanks to the live streams, we had an idea what it was going to look like, how it needed to play. So we'd done our research, and when you study hard and you practice hard, good things happen. And when you have a guy like that, I mean, my gosh, Chris is just so much fun to watch. And he gives you confidence. Like I said, I don't think I'm that great, but when I bowl with Chris, you can't help but have a really clear picture of what's supposed to happen. And when you have a really clear picture of what it's supposed to look like, it makes it a lot easier for yourself to go up there and do it. So really loosens up the arm swing and allows you to make better shots. Now,
Brent, as we finish up game 3 here, obviously there's more excitement to come the following day with Team All Events, but just what was this night like for you guys after the fact, knowing you had taken the lead? Obviously got to do all the after stuff with Matt, with the interview, but just what did, kind of letting it sink in right then and there, not even worrying about potentially winning down the road, just taking over the lead at the Open Championships team event, which, historically has been the one so many folks have wanted to win. Just what was that night like for you, just absorbing all that in?
With respect to my teammates, it was a different experience for me than it was for them. A lot of them were really young at this point, just coming out of their time at Wichita State, didn't have an affinity for the Open Championships. This same group we had bowled the previous year in El Paso. We'd made the top 10 board for the first time in our lives. And I honestly really thought, I thought when Chris and I took third in doubles, and Chris had a big 4 in game 3, that we remember looking back on thinking it cost us. I thought it was my only opportunity at an eagle. We came back and that night, first of all, those guys didn't know what Team All Events was. I don't think they knew. I assumed they knew that was a thing. But I want to say it was sometime when we were bowling minors the next day that I had to explain to them, hey, there's this big number that we're chasing. And if I remember right, it was that one. I believe I rolled a 2-pin in the 10th frame for us to get there. We've got
that for you. That'll be coming up here in a minute.
Okay, yeah. And so those guys got it, and that was Dan Higgins' group was without a doubt the one that made us sweat the most. They took the Team All Events that year and saved the Team Eagle for us, thankfully. And now they're going to go on to be a perennial powerhouse in that event for a lot of years. A lot of respect for those guys. But that night, like I said, I think it was different for me than the rest of them. We were in Reno. Those guys wanted to go do some gambling and have some fun and celebrate. And I don't remember doing a whole lot of that night myself, because I knew there was still a task for us to do next year or the next day. So it was fun, but I want to say we went to bed pretty early and tried to stay focused and a lot. I told you guys, I said, hey, if we do well tomorrow, we'll rebook our flights. We'll stay another couple days to hang out and party if we want, but we're still in work mode right now. So
now, as the old guy of that group at 28 years old, you're out there, you take the lead, you understand what that means. You understand the significance, the potential eagle on the line. So there's some things there, obviously, that you mentioned. You're thinking that maybe they aren't. And while your role may not have been throwing all the strikes like Prather would in the anchor position there, you had a pretty important job to keep the team focused, to keep them humble, and then to be able to come back the next morning and do what needed to be done, because you did know that there's a bigger picture. Not only is there one eagle out there for you, but obviously doubles and singles, and then Team All Events being the big one as well. A 45-game marathon that takes a lot of communication, a lot of patience, of course, and some endurance that you guys have experienced together. But what do you say as the leader of that team at that point the next morning to keep everybody focused all the way through, to realize that team is over for now? We'll worry about the scoreboard and the leaderboards later. Let's go out and get this Team All Events, which you guys went out and did. You got the lead in very dramatic fashion. You didn't hold on to win. You got second place in that, as you mentioned. But there's a lot happening there, a lot of things beyond just throwing strikes. Those guys have the talent, but to be able to perform and to be able to win takes way more than just throwing strikes.
Yeah, we're all fortunate to go through Wichita State's program and trained with Gordon and Mark there and the folks that they bring in to help support us. And the big theme for that 5-year span, we were at the back end of a 7-year, 8-year plan of really focusing on the present moment and getting centered in the now and recognizing that all great things happen in the now, not in the past, not in the future. Do what you can in the present moment. And I think that's really where our mindset was the next morning, growing up, or waking up, going, having breakfast, making sure that we were prepared, services were right, balls were in line, all that kind of stuff. And we just talked about staying in the present moment, staying there for one another, staying positive, not getting too high, not living too low. I do remember mentioning team Olivants to the group, and I don't remember who it was. It might have been a couple of them. They asked how much it paid, and I said it doesn't pay anything. And I remember at that time, again, just showing their age, it was kind of like, well, I don't need a trophy. What's the big deal? I think hindsight 2020, we were fortunate. Our local association presented those Eagles to us at our annual Hall of Fame banquet, and that was a really special night. And I think it really set in for all those guys what this means, and that this is a lifetime achievement. This is not some tournament that gets forgotten. People remember this stuff forever.
Now, the next morning, again, you mentioned that you might not be the best bowler on the team, but in the end, it was you who delivered to get the team into the lead in team all events. Chris Prather stepped up. I believe it was a stone 8-pin for him that put some of the pressure on your shoulders, and you got it done. It wasn't pretty by a textbook, but some of those breaks have to happen along the way to make these magical things happen, and it did. So, again, I would imagine a flood of emotion, certainly for those of us who are bowling fans and who are watching these moments, especially knowing how much that opportunity would mean to you. Can you describe the team all event situation, getting it done? Aaron's got the video. Then you stepped up, you delivered in the 10th to finish things out, again, to get the lead. You can't win if you're not in the lead. But, man, that had to be a huge moment for you as well.
Right. It's probability in my eyes. It was, how do we put ourselves in the chance to give ourselves the best chance to get an eagle? And obviously, if you can leave the OC in the lead in more than one event, your odds are greater. And so that was our number one objective, was just to lead there. It felt like we had a really good chance to win an eagle after taking the team all events lead. I wasn't convinced both numbers were going to hold up, but I left feeling like we had done it. And I can still remember pacing feverishly when Higgins' group was bowling, because they bowled so well in team and just missed our number. We knew they were going to chase the team all events, and the team all events is without a doubt the hardest eagle to win. Putting those games together, like you said, for 45 games, and not having anybody flub and have a bad game, a bad set, because that's really all it takes is one person to have a miserable set, and it makes it really hard to get there. Yeah, I remember, we I think I threw a game breaker 2. We rolled that 2-pin. We felt like it was a gift. It was a gift. I probably gassed it a little bit. Actually, that looks like it might have been a paradox. But yeah, that one was not my proudest moment, but it was still a lot of fun. And, you can say what you want to say. There was plenty of stone 10s in there too, to say that made up for it. And I don't really pay attention. You mentioned the stone 8 that Prather had. I don't really remember those things. I try so bad to hold on to the good moments and forget about the bad ones. And I think that's just a mindset. It keeps me more positive. And so the 2-pin is the one I remember. I don't remember all the rat 10s that I had. I'm sure they were there. But it was a lot of fun. It was just a lot of fun. And I hope so bad at some point in time in my life that we're able to put a group together again. It'd be nice if we could have some of the same guys involved, but put a group together that we can go back out there and make another run.
Well, just so you know, that being a part of those moments is pretty awesome for us as well. So thank you for letting us share in that. And then at that point, again, you mentioned the possibility of staying longer in Reno, celebrating a little bit, but you probably know as well that there's still a lot that can happen in the 5 or 6 weeks after that moment where you're at home, you're waiting. Now, I can imagine, just based on the way that you guys described the Wichita bowling community, which we already kind of knew, I could see the plane landing and the entire bowling community just lined up with banners welcoming you home. Of course, that doesn't really happen, but it has to feel that way, coming home to Wichita in the lead, position for an eagle, and then to wait it out and to get that phone call. Tell us about those weeks, waiting, watching the scores. You mentioned Higgies already. They got one. They let you have the other. But to get that call and to experience all that comes with after taking the lead, tell us about that.
Oh, it was nerve-wracking. And I was without a doubt the bigger mess of all of us. For whatever reason, like I said, because of my affinity for the history of the tournament and Wichita bowling community's history, it probably meant the most to me from an accomplishment perspective. The money we got, things like that were nice, but the Eagles are forever. The money spins, the Eagles are forever. And like I said, we rented like a big expedition that year, so we drove all the way out and drove all the way back, and it was euphoric. 20 some odd hours in the car, which is where I think some of the best memories are made. Coming back, you just felt like a winner. And you come back, you get in the bowling community, you start bowling league again, and everybody comes up, and everybody that's anybody, people that I've idolized for my entire life, coming up and congratulating us and telling us how proud they are and how special it was, especially back then to watch it. And it's unfortunate that things are the way they are now that make that hard to do. But being able to have that on video and one day be able to sit there and watch it with my kids, it'll be cool. I said it earlier. I wish so badly that we had video footage of the Chilton Eagles, because I would absolutely be going back and watching that kind of stuff on a regular basis.
Well, Brent, we'll bring it back to that and obviously kind of tie all this together. We have a comment in our Facebook chat from Mark Jensen talking about the banquet after getting the call, notifying that you guys officially won the regular team event. Just talk about being able to celebrate that moment with the community when it was all said and done, finally over. Eagles were all yours.
Yeah, the banquet was really special. We weren't sure how we were going to do it. It takes a while for that whole process to happen. Our banquet's typically in near the end of August, so we waited a number of months for them. But having it presented not just at our banquet, but the entire Chilton team was there. Paul Wallachek, Gordon, Mark. I think Steelsmith might have been there in place of Bob Chappelle, but certainly still part of that Chilton bowling brand. Gordon, Mark, Paul, and Rick. With our four, Chris Prather was doing what he does, out bowling something. He couldn't be there for it, but it was really, really cool to get those awards from the Chilton team. Mark, I think, was the MC of the banquet that year, so he was the one that. And Mark has a way with words. If you've ever watched an episode of Unsolved Mysteries, the old one with Robert Stack, he sounds just like the man, but he's very well spoken. He cares about this. Mark is equally as passionate, if not more passionate, about bowling and about how it can impact lives as I am, and so he takes his time with that stuff and really does it right. And as a moment I'll always remember. It was really, really special.
Now, in that process and kind of the passing of the baton, as they called it, to be part of the history at that point, when did it all sink in for you? Was it with the phone call? Was it the Eagle? Was it being with those guys? Was it the next year as the defending champs? Just to realize that, hey, your name is on this very short list of very important people.
Yeah, there's for me, and I can only speak from my own experience. There was no moment in time where it felt it was a slow sinking in. From the car ride home to the official announcement of us winning, to the checks showing up in the mail and winning one of the largest sums of money we'd ever won, a number of us, to the trophies finally arriving and being presented at that banquet in front of our bowling community, and then getting to go back and get the presentation from Mr. Hagan and the group there at the tournament, finally seeing those Eagle emblems next to our name. And it was also, one thing that our group will probably never see again. It was really cool to have the entire team with Eagles next to our name, to know that this was the group that had done it together. And when I bowled with Coach Lewis, he was the only one in our group. Billy Murphy talks about bowling with Paul Wallachek, his uncle, who was on the Chilton team, and how special it is to watch Paul go out there and wave and be recognized as an Eagle champion. That's certainly something that's going to keep me coming back, because if I wasn't already going to go bowl all the time, it's certainly something to look forward to and be remembered for. It's like I said, and you guys have brought a lot of it back. I've been so detached from it, so detached from competitive bowling on my own end for so long now. It can't. I think I might show up and go practice after this interview. I do miss those days a great deal, but at the same time, love the fact that I get to come in and work in the bowling business every day too.
Aaron does have a follow-up question, but before we jump in there, I just have to know, at any point, were there tears for you? Because I think in that position, I'd be crying for sure at some point. Sometimes even making those phone calls gets emotional for us. Between you, me, Aaron, and hundreds of viewers, did it at any point did it come to that for you?
I'm a crybaby. I openly admit it. I think crying is good. I think your body's trying to do it for a reason. But the funny thing is that it sneaks up on me. I don't think I'm going to cry. Everything's fine. And then it'll get me. I think the most tears for me were shed at the banquet. I mean, almost like ugly cry, the banquet when Chilton was there to present those awards for us, the way that Mark Jensen introduced us, one by one, announcing my name last, knowing that I was I was the elder of the group, and I had kind of assembled this group. I may not have been. I'm certainly not the most talented on that team, but knowing that I was the puppeteer, right, the guy that put all this together, and that was certainly special. And at the time, we were running the Bowers Bowling Tour events. So to slap the BBT name on that team and now allow that team name to live in infamy forever, it does feel like my team. I was, and it is really, really special. Those guys are really, really special. But there's no question the tears probably flowed heaviest. Probably calling my mom, calling my brother. I'm sure. I don't remember it specifically, but I'm sure that I probably cried on the phone with them. And like I said, at the banquet, when Mark introduced us, it all started to build and swell. And I just kind of, I remember losing it and kind of giving it the old ugly cry that day.
Well, Brent, you talked about your work in the bowling industry, and Northrock Lanes, obviously a historic venue, so much history there. And one of the coolest things about walking into Northrock Lanes, which so many people got to experience, this year alone with the USBC Women's Championships, was the trophy case that is right to the right when you go through the second set of doors there. And, you guys got your team picture there along with, some pretty memorable history. We got the Eagle, Team Tilt, the 300s, all that together. What's it like to walk past that every day? Getting to do, knowing you did that for the sport you love, walking into a job that you love, helping the sport. It's
cool. It's a motivator. Sometimes it feels a little selfish. I kind of feel a little embarrassed to be putting it on display like that. And it's not for me. That Eagle doesn't belong to me. Those trophies don't belong to the Wichita bowling community. It's funny. Mark Jensen was just here yesterday, and we're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to pull our individual Eagle out, and he's down at the Wichita Sports Hall of Fame. They've got their team sponsor trophy, which is what you see to the left and the right of that Eagle. So we're actually going to bring their team sponsor trophy in so that we have the team sponsor trophy of their team, the Team Tilt team, and then the Bowers Bowling Tour team in 16. And so change it up a little bit, but it's neat. There's so much history that's happened here, and my boss has talked about it a number of times. We need more cabinet space. We need more trophy cabinet space. We've talked about building things in the entryway, potentially building things over in the spare lounge back behind lanes 9 and 10, where we display a lot of the jerseys and the shirts of past champions. Because we've got a lot of stuff that could go on display. We've got one of them from 300, Dave Ozio's 279 and 93. So many special events, and getting to host the U.S. Open in 2018 and watch Dom win with my buddy Chris Prather on the show. That was really special. Then watching Dasha, a Wichita State alumni, win the Queens in 19 when the women's championships was here. Just really, really special. And so we need to showcase that better. But that trophy case, in my opinion, isn't big enough. We need to do a better job of displaying that.
So now, Brent, all these young talented bowlers are coming to town, coming into Northrock for all these terrific events that you guys run. Now you're kind of the guy. 20 years later, you're the Chilton Vending in a way of this new generation. They're looking up to you. They're seeing and hearing about your successes and your teams, and of course the guys you bowl with. You hosted the Storm Youth Championships recently. A lot of top talent there. Some great signings for Wichita State this week. You mentioned Ryan Barnes was in the building practicing, trying to make his own legacy. What advice do you have for these guys coming in? They are you 15 or 20 years ago, trying to make their way in this bowling world.
Work harder than I did. Ryan comes in, made a late decision to come to Wichita State. Wasn't sure if he was going to pursue college basketball or not. And he's trying out for the bowling team here. I went out golfing with a number of the Wichita State players yesterday, and I try really hard. I mean, a lot of them are here, away from their families for the first time. So I do what I can to be a good influence and to, kind of a fatherly figure for some of them. And I take them out to lunch. I take them out to breakfast and dinner once in a while, and just try to be a voice of reason sometimes when they're going through tough stuff. But the one thing I try to tell them all is don't waste this time. This is the most special time of your life for most of you. And the majority of you will not go on to become Jason Belmonte or something of that like. But work hard like you might. Work hard like you're trying to become the greatest bowler on earth, because the only way you do become the greatest bowler on earth is you don't give up and you work really, really hard. And so, but at the same time, I try to make it very clear to them how important it is to give back to bowling, recognize all that bowling has given them. There's too many people out there that move too quickly to talk about the bad things they don't like about bowling. And I've got probably a handful of things for every reason they don't like bowling. I've probably got 4 or 5 reasons why bowling is special and great and a lifetime sport that you never have to stop playing. And kids can earn scholarships at any age. And bowling is so unique. It's uncomparable to anything else out there. And so I try to make sure they understand that they owe something back to the sport of bowling. The sport of bowling is giving them a great gift right now, and I hope that they respect that and are respectful when they're in our bowling centers, bowling in our leagues. They recognize that they are on display as Wichita State and Newman University. Our league bowlers look to them, our open play people bowling next to them that might not show lane courtesy or something like that. They don't know these things, and so it's important that they treat that with some respect.
Well, we certainly appreciate all you do to stay in town there and really transition and teach the next generation. We did see recently on social media, we don't have a video, but you had an opportunity to kind of turn back time a little bit and go back to your Wichita State days and experience something that the program is pretty known for. And it's not only just bowling and practicing the mental game in school, but the physical conditioning as well that the team must go through. Always in great shape. And there's a nice video of you. Aaron Smith doing some homework, but going through some of it. And now I know Northrock Lanes also very well known for the AJ's Grill and the amazing pizza there. So how much trouble has the AJ's Pizza been since graduating to get where you are? And how did this turn out for you in the day that followed? Maybe.
First of all, I didn't actually do the test. A lot of people assumed I was going to be sore the next day. I wasn't sore. I only did about 4 push-ups and a quick little jog there. But it's funny that post I've been going for 3 years now to watch them do their PT test and honestly support them. I took a cooler of waters. I take my megaphone. I take a JBL speaker with me to give them some Rocky-like music. And typically it's out at Cessna Stadium in a bigger venue. The weather was bad this day, so we did it upstairs. But 3 years ago, Chris Green from Team Tilt went with me. Last year I went with Wesley Lowe. This year with Mitch Hoope. And I'm hopeful more alumni will come out and support them there because there is kind of this gap between the current Wichita State crew and the alumni. And a lot of the Wichita State kids and a lot of the college kids in town used to bowl leagues a lot more. It was a lot more common, even the girls team and whatnot. I've tried really hard to get them back in and get them introduced to the community. But at the same time, when they're bowling league, they got to realize that they are looked highly upon. People are watching them. They're paying attention. As Coach V used to always say, Wichita State is under a microscope. People are always paying attention to what we do. And so, but I do really want more alumni to go out there with me each year, sit on the bleachers, cheer for him, clap for him. Mark Buffa even reached out. He wants to do some kind of a virtual PT test of all the alumni. I haven't committed to that yet, but I'm sure Mark can still compete with a lot of those guys in the PT test, the 2 minute push-up test, the 2 minute sit-up test, and the 2 mile run. But I think it would be fun to have a squad of alumni attempt the PT test maybe at the end of the day. But it was a fun day.
Now, a lot of people try to argue that bowling's not a sport, but at Wichita State, certainly you guys treat it very much so. Out there training, doing physical conditioning, and that's part of the plan. And then, I mean, obviously there's talent coming in, but all of that hard work put together has to add up to the kind of success and the commitment that you guys have as a team. And then to be able to take that out into the real world and have the success as well, it's got to be pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how anybody can make an argument that being in shape could hurt your ability as a bowler. Certainly want to prevent injury and stretching and things like that. It's probably a little bit different plan or workout plan than maybe other sports would be, but that's common. Every sport has its own plan, on how that works. And so historically, Wichita State's always done that PT test. I know they've gotten a lot more involved with fitness, and honestly, the group that they've got now is probably one of the fittest teams that we've had. And I don't know if that's just college bowling in general or whatnot, but I know when I was on the team, John Zerbinski and I were running pretty slow. Jake Peters had come in a year or two after that. He was running pretty slow, and so it's definitely – fitness is definitely becoming a part of competitive bowling, which I think is a great thing.
Well, again, awesome stuff and everything that you're doing there also to again, facilitate the next steps for the next generation. What's coming up for you for Northrock Lanes? There seems to always be some kind of event happening there, always running something, trying to come up with new ideas just to keep people there and motivated and bowling, doing everything you can. What's up?
We've got the Swiss Trios coming up, not this coming weekend, but the next weekend. That's an event that historically fills with 3-member teams. He does 46 teams. Matt McFadden does a great job running that event. There's still some slots for the Swiss. I think they've got 3 or 4 team slots. Obviously, COVID has thrown a wrench in a lot of the stuff. We just got done with the Storm Youth Championships, our second year running that. That event is amazing. They sold out in 7 minutes. I don't know how they do it. It's incredible. Obviously, something very special about that event, the kids and the families that come into Wichita. We get a lot of compliments from people that come to Wichita that have never been here, that don't realize what Wichita is or how it works. And I can't quite explain it. Chad's referenced Hutchinson and Wichita as the Paradise Corridor. It's definitely not like other places in the country. The people are friendly. You get all 4 seasons here. And obviously, if you're a bowler, there's a great community that will welcome you. But, the SYC was great this last weekend. We'll have the Swiss Trios. We just got done getting the majority of our fall leagues on the floor. We're in the process of creating our short season league structure. We always create a schedule of leagues to fill the gaps that typically starts in October and will run for 8 to 10 weeks until Christmas. And then we'll run another section of short season leagues starting in January. Otherwise, after Swiss, as far as competitive tournaments, we've got some small sweepers that our company will put on at different bowling centers that we own between now and Christmas. But our hope there is that as the weather gets colder, hopefully we'll get some party business back, Christmas parties, corporate parties, things like that. We are 56,000 square feet, 48 lanes, largest bowling center in the state of Kansas. So there is plenty of room for us to space out and social distance. We're just, we're fighting through this time like anybody else is and trying to do it as safe as possible while also helping people have fun. That's what we do. We're in the fun business, So whether that's tournaments, leagues, or parties, cosmic, whatever, we want people to associate bowling with fun.
Well, and hopefully the Inside the OC podcast with fun as well, because it really is, and it has been. As we get ready to wind down, Brent, you've been a youth bowler, a youth leader, a sportsmanship award winner, Star of Tomorrow, Junior Team USA, collegiate champion, eventually an Eagle winner, and now you're in a role to help shape the future of bowling. That's a lot, and you said it didn't feel like that much, and you're still a young guy. You have much respect coming in from all around the industry. It's still probably pretty early to determine, but what would you like your legacy to be in the sport of bowling when it's all done, with all the things you've accomplished and all the things you're trying to do? What do you want the Brent Bowers legacy to be?
Names that come to mind are people like Bill Lillard and Joe Norris and Dick Weber. I hope when it's all said and done, I made a post the other day, which I've been doing more lately, but I've done a good job of avoiding social media here lately. But I just want people when I'm gone, I want them to know that I did this for the right reasons, and that bowling has been paying me. Right? Bowling has been giving me things throughout my entire life, and my objective, my goal is just to give it back and to ensure that bowling the way it is today still exists in this market, in this community in 20 or 30 years, so that the next Brent Bowers can be influenced the same way that I was. One foot in front of the other. I live, eat, sleep, and breathe bowling, and I love it. And it truly does feel like the more I give to it, the more I get back from it. And that's not intentional. It just seems to happen. Great relationships, great people. But when it's all said and done, obviously there's Hall of Fames that one day I'm hopeful to be in, that I'm able to share those connections with people like Mark Lewis and Mark Jensen, and Bill Lillard and Dick Weber, things like that. That's the stuff that motivates me, is just trying to carry on those folks' legacy, because they're not, obviously Dick and Bill Lillard aren't here anymore. And people like Mark Jensen and Mark Lewis and Gordon Vatican won't be here forever. And I just want to make sure that I help keep that tradition moving and going, and keep the history alive,
Brent, I think the word ambassador is not enough to express what you mean to the sport. We got to come up with a new term to just describe everything you bring to the sport of bowling. So thank you for that, sir.
Thank you.
And you talked about the history, and obviously a big historical moment, last year at Northrock Lanes, and something I got to spend a lot of time at, the 100th edition of the Women's Championships being held there. Obviously, that was a new transition for the tournament, going away from, the convention center setting, trying to fit everything into the bowling center. And I know that was definitely a labor of love for not only you, but all the folks at Northrock Lanes. What was that experience like, being able to bring that tournament in? Obviously, the transformation of Northrock Lanes, and just being a part of that history as well.
It was really special. As somebody who cares a lot about the OC and the Women's Championship in general, I mean, the women, the OC is the largest participatory sporting event on earth, and the women's is the second largest. And when you tell that to non-bowlers, they really, it draws a light bulb in their head, kind of, wow, I had no idea this existed in bowling. And so to host an event like that now at Northrock for the second time, we had it back in 2004, I believe it was. Mm-hmm. This was actually the place where ABC and WIBC made the decision to migrate to the United States Bowling Congress. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work, a labor of love, like mentioned. We certainly could have done better. I think that's the challenge. It's one of the reasons why we like to host. We host the Southwest Bowling Tournament every year, have for 15 years. It has grown every year it's been at Northrock Lanes. Started at 270 teams, is now eclipsed over 800 teams. We get better with time and with repetition. And I'm hopeful if the opportunity comes to bid for those events again in the future, we're going to do it, because I know if I'm still here, which I hope to be, if and when the Women's Championship ever makes it back to Wichita, we'll do an even better job of ensuring that everybody has a great trip to Wichita and enjoys our facility. I was involved a little bit in the bidding process. I wasn't with Northrock at the time, but I was involved with the local Convention and Visitors Bureau when they bid for that event. And it's a significant, economic impact to our community. And it really, for us, it's great because it allows us to showcase bowling to the non-bowlers of our community. They realize how important bowling is to Wichita, even when they're not actively bowling themselves. And I was around and familiar with the 2011 bidding process for the OC. Would have been fantastic if that would have happened. We hit some snags that didn't allow it to happen, but that would be, at the end of it all, I would absolutely kill for the opportunity to have an open championships in a convention center somewhere here in Wichita. But control the controllables. If an opportunity comes for us to bid, I will certainly be at the front of the line pushing our community to do whatever necessary to bring one of those two events back to Wichita.
Well, a lot of great insight there. We certainly appreciate all the support and all the hard work. And I know that event, as well as the Queens, turned out great. A lot of happy folks leaving Wichita and ready to go back. Aaron Smith included for sure. We sure covered a lot of ground today. Talking about the life and times of Brent Bowers. We took it all the way back. We didn't get to show the diapers picture, but we'll save that for another day. You're welcome. Wow.
Well, and luckily, my mom has a photo somewhere of me bowling buck naked in the hallway of our house. And it used to be on her board at Farmland when she was working in Hutchinson. She's lost it. Thank God she's lost it, because that picture would be everywhere. Throwing a 6-pound slime ball, Brunswick slime ball, my very first bowling ball, with a couple of pins set up at the end of the hallway, fresh out of the bathtub. I honest to God never destroyed that photo, but I'm sure she thinks I did. Maybe the dog ate it. I don't know. But thank goodness she didn't get a hold of that one.
Very nice. Well, as you mentioned, some of these memories to share with your kids, and hopefully not recreating that photo at any point as well. But again, say hello to the wife for us and all the folks in Wichita. Very, very friendly folks, and we can't wait to see them in 2021 in Las Vegas. Aaron Smith, any final thoughts for today before we head out?
Brent, just once again, a big thanks just for everything you do for the sport. If there's anything that, folks can take away from this podcast, is your love and dedication to it. And I think all of us feel the same way, in that we're lucky to spend each and every day involved with this great sport. So thank you for showcasing that today. So next time we're all in Wichita, we're going to go Scotch and sirloin. We're going to have a good steak, maybe a drink or two, and, just celebrate bowling in a little bit different way. But looking forward to seeing you again, sir. And obviously, best of luck with all the ventures in Wichita and Northrock Lanes, and stay safe out there.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. It's been a wonderful trip down memory lane. I wasn't expecting a lot of this. I appreciate the heads up on the special guest. Really appreciate you letting me know he was going to pop in and take me back to my childhood. But it was a very fun day. Thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it.
Hey, we're all about the fun and surprises. And folks, the fun doesn't end here on Bowl TV. Coming up tomorrow, we have the greatest seasons in PWBA and women's bowling. That'll be coming up, and we'll have that next Friday as well. And on the PWBA podcast on Monday, it is going to be from the Miami Waves and Phoenix Fury, the PBA League coaches, Kim Kearney and Bob Learn Jr. Looking forward to that. And then scheduled for next week here on the Inside the OC podcast, possibly the gentleman who saved my job at USBC. I can't wait to tell that story. Sean Lee bowled a 300 game at the 2008 Open Championships on the absolute perfect day at the perfect time. Thank you, Sean. We'll talk much more about that and tell that story. That was the pre-video days. So unfortunately, we only have my story to go by, which may or may not be embellished quite a bit. But look forward to that next week here on Inside the OC. And folks, that is going to do it for today. Once again, we appreciate everybody tuning in for this extended edition with special guest Chad Murphy, the executive director of USBC, and of course, the hardworking Brent Bowers. For Aaron Smith, my name is Matt Canizaro, folks. That's the news for now. We'll see you on the lanes.